Hi, Rob Brown here with you on this, Friday, September 2nd. College football is underway, man. 16 games last night. It was a lot of fun. We are broadcasting, as we always do, live from Red River Ford Toyota in Wynn, Arkansas, open Monday through Saturday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Check them out on the website, redriverfordtoyota.com. They will deliver anywhere. If you're looking to do a trade-in, the best prices on trade-ins probably in 20 plus years. That ain't gonna last forever, but they're great folks to deal with. Again, they've been recently have delivered trucks to Tampa, Dallas, let's see, Nashville, Birmingham, Atlanta, and that's from here in Wynn, Arkansas. Great folks. Proud to have them as a sponsor, just like ECS House Industries. Jason Caldwell joins us. Jimmy Hodge is on. Jason Caldwell inside the Auburn Tigers in the first segment. Second segment, Brad Logan of Logan Media Network. Check in, get an update on Ole Miss and Mississippi State. Interesting watching that line on the Mississippi State game against Memphis. That'll be a fun one. Is this going to be a breakout game for Will Rogers and launch Mississippi State to the best season in year 3 under Mike Leach? Well, they need it, not especially the way they ended last year. Top of the second hour, Johnny Ballpark Franks will check in from Nashville, talking FSU, SEC, ACC, early Heisman picks. Of course, that's way too early, but he knows more and interviews more Heisman Trophy winners than anybody. And in the fourth segment, Yann Cowart, GMC Sports Architecture. We'll talk about who's building all these massive facilities and while the costs are going up, pretty obvious there. Cost of materials going up, but just the way they're designing all these things. And we'll get into a lot in these next 2 hours as we are with you every Monday through Saturday. Check us out, www.sidelines.live, and the great folks at Kicks 96.3 down in Alexander City and Lake Martin area, Central Alabama. 750 miles of coastline. A lot of people in nice, beautiful lake houses out on Lake Martin listening to and watching college football. And it's a great launching pad. If you're going down to Auburn for a game, you cannot beat it. We got high school football underway, and we got Jason Caldwell on StreamYard with us. Jason, Tigers open up tomorrow against Mercer. I mean, I remember the 2017 Auburn-Mercer game. That thing was close, but I think Auburn is going to be ready for Mercer. They scored 63 points on Morehead State last week. But I guess my biggest question to you is now TJ Finley, it's official. He's the starter. Ashford and Calzada, they'll probably get some reps if Auburn gets a big lead tomorrow night. But what's your takeaway from this last week of practice? What are areas that you're excited about, and what are concerns?
Yeah, hey Rob, good to be here this morning. I don't know. You look at it. I think we'll see Robbie Ashford. I thought all along that they would have a second quarterback that would get reps and actually run the offense. I still think that's the case. I think TJ Finley is their number one guy going in, but I think they want to see what Robbie Ashford can do. Zach Calzada's played. He's the third guy, so I think Robbie Ashford, they're going to kind of get a look at him and see what he can do. The interesting thing for me is how you balance needing guys getting reps versus getting other guys, younger guys in the game. That was the thing they didn't do very well last year, early in the season, especially on the defensive side of the ball. How many reps can you get a Jeffrey Emba on defense? Some of those younger guys, Dylan Brooks, we've talked about Dylan Brooks, Emba and Dylan Brooks, and those guys, they need reps on defense to get prepared for the Penn State and for the SECs of the world. And offensively, Tate Johnson needs as many reps as he can get at the center position, but he's also your number one guy. You play him, you take your first offense out if you're up 38-0 in the third quarter, but he's only played half a game against Mercer. He needs reps. So how do you balance those things? That's one of the things. But I've had people ask me, what do they need to do to change your mind or those things? I'm like, there's nothing really positive that like doing what Tennessee did last night. That's what you're supposed to do. The only thing you can have is a negative from this game. If you struggle, if you turn it over, do those things. So if you're Auburn, you just have to take care of business. You do that, then give yourself a chance to do it in week 2 against what looks like a San Jose State team that's not as good as I thought they might be coming into this year based on what they did last night. So, it's opportunities in 2 weeks, in these first 2 weeks for this Auburn team.
Yeah, and I think people that say it doesn't matter how you play in these kind of games are fools. That's like saying it doesn't matter if you get a C on a test versus an A. Yeah, you need to go out there and take care of business and be efficient, and you want to play as many guys as you can. You got to approach it seriously. Watching football last night, Tennessee just ground up. They did what they wanted with Ball State, but that's what you're supposed to do. That I totally agree with you. My question about Jeffrey M'ba, he's a giant, number 1 junior college defensive lineman in the country. He's from France, from the Congo, then France, and now here. What's your impression of him right now? Is he really just a raw, freakishly incredible athlete that all it's going to take is playing time? And do you think what's his ceiling?
Yeah, I think he has a tremendous ceiling. You just never know how long it's going to take to get there from a junior college ranks. I mean, I just think back to, even the best of those guys, skilled players, it's easier. Skilled players can come in, and Nick Marshall, Cam Newton, but those guys were also at a Division I school before, so they kind of knew what it was about. Nick Fairley's the guy that comes to mind. Nick Fairley was as dominant a defensive lineman as we have ever seen, not only at Auburn, but period. I mean, that 1 year but it took him till the second year to get there. The bowl game, the Outback Bowl game against Northwestern, that was the first time you saw those signs. How long does it take Jeffrey M'ba to get there? That's what you can't. But I think there's going to be some adjustment period. I think it's just natural. It's natural adjustment period for transfers, for junior college guys, for high school guys. He's much less experienced than most normal high school guys would be, considering his lack of football experience. But he's also bigger and more athletic than those guys. So, he may hit it a little quicker, but it may take him a little while.
Yeah. Another one, something we hadn't seen in a long time, is a 6'4", 6'5" linebacker, tall bender like Cam Riley from down on the Conecuh River, Evergreen, Alabama. And he's put on some weight. You've got Owen Papo coming back, Wesley Steiner. What's your impression of this linebacking group? I know people say we need more depth there. I think they need more reps.
Yeah, no, the depth is – I think the depth's okay because you're only going to play 2 of those guys. Very rarely are you going to play a third linebacker. I think that's been shown the last couple of years. You're going to be in an – even though they didn't list a nickel on the depth chart, you're going to be in a nickel 75-80% of the time on defense nowadays. That's just the way you're played. So I think the depth is okay when you look at Wesley Steiner and you look at Eugene Asante coming in. I mean, even the young guys coming up, you think about, Desmond Tisdale is not a young guy. He's a third-year guy, but you have him and you have Powell Gordon, true freshman from Auburn High School. I think they've got plenty of depth for the 2 positions. It's just not very rarely do people play 3 linebackers anymore. And so I think the depth is there. You can, Owen Papo stay healthy and be that guy. That's the first order of business for this team because that's vitally important for that defense. And I think Cam Riley has the ability to become a difference maker kind of linebacker. And, they've had some good players, but they've all been smaller, undersized kind of guys for quite a while. And, he's the first guy that you start looking at him going, that looks like an NFL linebacker. KJ Britt's playing in the NFL, but he's not that 6'3", 6'4", long body. Cam Riley is that guy. And I think he's a guy that can bring something different.
Yeah. A lot of ways you could play him too. I can't imagine him being moved out to the edge rusher position, but if Auburn needs depth, that's another player because you've got Eku Lakota and you've got Dylan Brooks, hasn't played any, and of course Derek Hall, I think is one of the best in the SEC. So that's going to be fun. Jimmy, questions for Jason Caldwell inside the Auburn Tigers?
Well, when you talk about Owen Papo, we know what a critical player he is. And when he got injured in the Penn State game last year, he just never really got over it because he was out for the better part of a month. And then when he came back, he tried to give it a go, but, he just wasn't able to do it. And I'm just curious how he was handled during preseason camp. I'm sure he's 100%. Did he go through all of the drills during a normal practice and go through all the important stuff? And I was curious during scrimmages. I know the first scrimmage for sure at Alabama, Will Anderson didn't play at all. And for a player as valuable as this, did they get him just enough scrimmage action to keep him sharp, but just avoid any unnecessary, exposure to maybe, coming up with a freak injury and that type of thing? How was he been brought up, during this training camp period of the last 4 weeks?
Yeah, but before that, he was full go during their conditioning time during the summer. And their conditioning time is running stadiums at Jordan-Hare Stadium. They go to the upper deck and run the stadiums, and he was full go during those periods. And for a guy that was coming off a foot issue, if they turn him loose for those things, that to me that would probably been a more dangerous thing to do than actually playing football. And he was able to do that, went through it fine. He was one of the leaders of those groups when they did it. So for them, they were like, okay, he's good to go. So he went through drills. He wasn't held out of those things. Now, yeah, in scrimmage situations, him and Colby Wood and Derek Hall, those guys, they limited some of their looks, because those scrimmages really nowadays in preseason, those scrimmages are to see what young guys are going to be able to help you, and that's what they were able to do with some of those guys on that defensive side of the ball. So, there'd be a scrimmage where Nehemiah Pritchett might be held out, and it was the next group of corners to play, and so they did some of those things. But no, Owen, physically ready to go. It should be sharp, and I think like most teams around the country, just ready to see somebody else for the first time and get it on film, see where you need to correct things, and start that process.
Jason, and I like what Jimmy just asked about Owen Pappoe. I don't think the average fan fully appreciates how severe a high ankle sprain is, especially when you're on your feet all the time. I mean, how do you once you have that, it's pretty much it for the season. I hate that, but I also am curious. You talked about Desmond Tisdale. He's been there 3 years, and Zykevious Walker is not going to play in the game tomorrow night. Kind of tell us what you think's going on there. I think he had his knee scoped.
Yeah, Zykevious had a knee scope. My guess is that it'll be at least a couple of games before we see him, and then see how quickly he can get back in there. But it's the deepest position on this team in terms of numbers. Now he's one of the experienced guys though, and so that's an issue there. And it's kind of just continues to be the thing for him. He's been dealing with injuries his first couple of years, and now kind of start off year 3 the same way. But you look at it, and especially one of the questions I have is how do they line up on defense?
Yeah.
They listed 5 different positions on the defensive line, because they have Eke Leota as a different type of position. They have the stud position and now the edge position. So they have both of those guys listed as starters. Last year they played Derek Hall, and whether it was Leota or TD Moultrie or Romello Height, they played a lot of those guys at the same time, but they had a lot more depth last year. I don't know how often they're going to be able to play those 2 guys together and for how much. When you do that, what does Jason Jones do? Because you're not playing a nose with those guys on the field. So there's some questions I have about how this thing is going to line up. They're going to give some teams some different looks, but I don't think you're going to see all those guys on the field at the same time.
They talk about the dollar package where you're rushing 3 and dropping 8 back in coverage. We saw that last year, Auburn, Mississippi State. No one's ever going to forget that. The nickel, that is fairly common. And then they call the dime where you've got 6 defensive backs. I remember Kevin Steele when Auburn played LSU in 2019. They were holding LSU in check for a while with a 3-1-7 defense. What kind of things are we going to see we got about a minute before the break out of Jeff Schmedding this year, different than what we saw last year?
I think that's the question. We heard Jalen Simpson say, bend but don't break. That's what he told us the other day, which sounds very familiar to the way they played for a lot of the season last year. That Mississippi State game last year, Ole Miss did the same thing. Ole Miss played the exact same defense and made it work.
Yeah.
No matter what defense is called, you got to make it work, and you can if you tackle and get off the field on third downs, do some of those things. They didn't do that, enough in some of those games, and it kept drives alive, and it kept them on the field. That's the thing they got to do now. You get in those third and long situations, you can't give up a 17-yard pass no matter what defense you're in.
Yeah, I agree. We're going to take a quick break, be back with more. Jason Caldwell inside the Auburn Tigers talking with Rob Brown, Jimmy Hides on Sidelines.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4 City exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
Jimmy, I know you got some more questions for Jason. And Jason, I think that everybody out here is, anticipating, what about the defense? We saw last night, Derek Mason's defense at Oklahoma State, what they gave up. Man, unbelievable. Jimmy?
Well, it's kind of interesting, Jason, you bring up the point of, trying to get younger players as many reps as possible, but also, new starters or new players that have come into program from the portal or, JC and getting them familiar with game situations. But at the same time, since you're playing two teams that most everybody expects you to beat, is the coaching staff on the defensive side, is Schmedding going to, for the most part, try to stick with vanilla looks on defense so that Penn State doesn't see anything? Because I'm sure they have some wrinkles prepared for them. And the main goal is just for the new players to be able to just learn the basic core defense and just get comfortable with that. And then when you get to the more sophisticated stuff, just worry about that later, but just get the young players familiar with just the very basics. And just remember that although this can be a very complicated game, let's just get comfortable with playing football, because that's really what the sport's about, is your instincts. Just go out there and play.
Yeah, I'd be very surprised if we see a whole lot of wrinkles on defense. You look at it, it's the same defense. I mean, it's, even though Derek Mason's gone, they're doing the same thing. It's the same scheme. None of the terminology is changed, anything like that. So, so they were able to kind of just continue to add to it. And you got a lot of veterans back on defense. And Frank, let's be frank about it. Mercer's a pretty good FCS team, but their left tackle is 275. Their right guard's 250. This is a team that Auburn should dominate on the lines of scrimmage. If you dominate teams on the line of scrimmage, no matter what you do, you can do whatever you want to, and you don't have to do a whole lot. And that would be my guess is the plan going in is, look, hey, go win the line of scrimmage, and then you can do whatever you want to on defense and offense. We saw that last year, the first couple of games against Akron and Alabama State. They were able to do those things, but they did those things. But, they've talked about it more. They have, about getting younger guys in the game. You do those things, then let your young guys get some real practical experience, running the defense, running the offense, and then you'll have more depth when the time comes.
Jason, everybody is all thinking right now, if you're an Auburn fan, Penn State's coming to town in 2 weeks. They watched them play last night against Purdue. You saw this Penn State last year. That game went down to the wire. Is Penn State any better than they were last year? And you think Auburn's any better? Going into the season at this same time a year ago.
Yeah, we know more about Penn State than we will about Auburn. That's for sure. Having to go to Purdue, Aiden O'Connell. That's a Purdue team that people think is going to be a pretty good team, and Penn State had to battle. They're not dynamic. How dynamic can Auburn be? That's the question. Penn State is a solid football team that looks very similar to what they did last year, except I don't think they have a nearly good wide receiver as they had last year. So if you ask me what Penn State is, I think they're very similar to last year. And that was a team that they won 6 games last year, somewhere around there, maybe 6 or 7.
Yeah.
I think that's what they are. And they got to come to Auburn. But they do know a lot more about themselves than Auburn will after these first 2 games. And so I think that's a plus for them that they've gone on the road. They got a very experienced quarterback he's a solid quarterback, but he doesn't fold under pressure as we saw last night. So that's one thing they have going for them. But yeah, I don't know that we'll know much about Auburn until after week 3, to be quite honest.
Yeah. Auburn's got the help wanted sign up in the window in the athletic complex looking for a new athletic director. We had a chance to have Utah State athletic director John Hartwell on Sidelines with us yesterday. And, I know he's been making the rounds since, he's been down here. Man, wow, he was impressive. And I'm curious if you're hearing his name and what other names in the search, because Auburn's got to get this one right. They cannot mess this up. This is such a critical hire. And just, reading the resume on John Hartwell, accounting, E&Y, CFO of a business. That's all an athletic department is. In the case of Auburn, about $180 million athletic budget. You better get the right person in there.
Yeah, I think they're gonna hire an interim before they really begin searching. So people have thrown out the search thing right now. I don't think they're there yet. I don't think this is a rush. They're not in a rush to do this. They want to get it right. You're correct. And President Roberts, from everything I've heard from him and about him, is a guy that's going to be very diligent in making sure they make the right decision. And so I think there'll be an interim name first, and then they will actively go on the search, from that point moving forward. I'm sure they're getting flooded, and it's funny, people, complain about Auburn and the work environment, all that stuff. You have an AD job open, and everybody is throwing their name in the ring. And so, it's pretty funny the way that happens.
Oh, it is. I tell you, Auburn's biggest obstacle is all the useful idiots they have in their fan base that believe every stupid rumor that comes along and that are put out by a lot of their own fans because they have their own agendas. And if you're right, look around the country, look at the interest from every corner for that Auburn job. Oh my God, get Auburn people need to appreciate what they've got. And I'm one of them, and I do. And I wanted to ask you that question. I hope they don't take too long because everything's about perception and direction. Okay, back, Jimmy. Let's get back to football. I know you got some more questions about maybe the wide receiver position.
Well, it's a critical area because Auburn's strength in the passing game last year was obviously with their tight ends, and they want to continue to use those guys because they were very successful. But we all know, too, in the SEC, it's so critical to have an effective vertical passing game because you've got to stretch those defenses. You can't allow them to put 8 guys in the box, which allows defenses to outnumber the blockers you have trying to get running plays to be successful. So I'm just curious who the Auburn fan base can look for tomorrow, maybe to be a factor in this game and serve notice that there'll be significant contributors. And I'm talking basically young players because a lot of those guys, when they come into this level of football, receivers are just critical for the reasons I mentioned, but also sometimes it takes a while to learn the schemes, and a lot of these defenses are pretty savvy. Certainly, Penn State is, and but with these first two games, it seems like this would be a scenario in which it would allow for really talented, skilled players with great potential to really be able to make some big plays in these first two games.
Yeah, no, to me, it's one of the more important things for this team. You know, we always come back to running the football. They've got to be able to run the football against everybody they play to have a chance. When they can't run the football, then they're dead in the water. I mean, it's not just them. I mean, look at Alabama in the national championship game. You take away playmaker outside, and all of a sudden Georgia says, "Okay, well we're going to not allow you to run the football," and it's game over. I think it's the same thing for this Auburn offense. So it starts with running game, but then you're right, they got to be able to make explosive plays in the passing game. It's been I don't know, one of my soapbox things for about the past 5 years, that and offensive line recruiting and others. And I'll take you back to last year. Auburn had 2 plays of over 50 yards in the passing game for the season. That's tied for 92nd in the country, along with big explosive offenses like Army and Arizona and Buffalo and Colorado and Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, others. You can't win in this league and at a high level in college football. Iowa wins because they grind it out in the other division. If I was playing, if they had to play Ohio State and Penn State and all those teams year after year, it'd be tough. But they do it for defense, and they do it really good. But you play in the SEC right now with the speed and talent and athleticism in this league, you've got to be able to score points, and you can't do it every drive being 15 plays. You get in the red zone, the time's compressed. It's really hard to score and score touchdowns every time you get in the red zone. You've got to have explosive plays, and it cannot be all balls thrown 50 yards in the air. The wide receivers have to do something with the ball in their hands, and they got some guys that have that potential. Now they got to go do it.
Yeah. Jason, look, this is why we love having you on here. One more thing. What's your message to Auburn fans as they start this season, year 2 under Brian Harsin? Everything you've seen in practice, kind of a collective montage of, okay, this is what I think is going to happen in the 22 season.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're going to play hard first and foremost. Then we'll see if they have playmakers. That's it. You got to have playmakers on offense and defense. If they can find those guys, then they're going to compete. And they're 6-7 last year, but they competed against just about everybody, and they were in games. Can you win a few more of those games? That's the goal. That's the charge for this team. If they can, then you can have some fun. And my message has been the whole time: look, you can't control anything. You're a fan. You're not playing. I can't control anything. All I can do is go watch and see what happens. We wait for these moments every year to get to football season. Just go see what happens and be a fan.
Yeah. And I think if there was one bumper sticker that I would sell, it would be orange and blue. It would say finish, just finish. And if they do that, I mean, last year it could have been different. And I think this year, the most important thing, I've been on a group discussion with a bunch of Auburn folks this morning, and that is the number one thing. These guys believe in Harsin and the other coaches. They love their teammates, and they love being at Auburn. They came back. Don't sell Auburn short in the 22 season. Jason, tell people how they can follow you. And again, love having you on. Alabama Sports Writer of the Year, proud native of Sylacauga, the Marble City. But look forward to this next week as well. Yeah,
you can check us out at autigers.com, auburnundercover.com, as well as it's Auburn247, and can also follow me on Twitter at ITATJason.
All right, look, man, have a great weekend. Look forward to reading all your content after we get through with Mercer, which I think should be a big win, but it's, hey, one at a time. It's a 12-chapter book. Thanks.
All
right. Jimmy, I like the way you broke that down, and Jason talks about the receivers. We call it YAC, yards after contact. That there are some quarterbacks who get the ball to the receiver, but he's got to turn his body and twist around. Then they're the ones who get it out front of them in the right where they've got to have it so they can keep running and catch it in full stride. Is the quarterback position now becoming more difficult because of the offenses, or is it the same as it's always been? You better have that alpha male stud in there at the quarterback position who's mentally and physically way ahead of everybody else.
Well, quarterback position involves a lot of different attributes. You have to sense how the flow of a game's going, and then when you're in the huddle, or for teams that huddle anymore,
what's that, Jimmy?
you have to just give your teammates a sense of confidence. Hey man, we're in good shape. All we got to do is execute. And when it comes to the quarterback and his receivers, especially wide receivers, it's a lot different because 10 years ago, the back shoulder fade throw was not a prominent play in college football. But now it is, because it's one of the few plays, maybe the only pass play in college football, other than kind of the jump ball throw that you make when a receiver's covered. But if he's 5 inches taller than the defender, he can still make the catch.
Yeah.
Well, the back shoulder fade throw involves throwing the ball behind the receiver, but yet the receiver knows it's coming and he can adjust to the ball. And it's much harder for the defensive back to make an adjustment because the wide receiver is usually closest to the sideline. And when that ball is thrown to the outside, the receiver can also shield his body from the defender trying to get to the ball. So that is one of the biggest major changes in the downfield passing game. But yet you got to execute the other stuff, the short slip screens where, you've got blockers or your linemen.
We got Brad Logan. I'm sorry.
Okay, 1 second. Just trying to get up the field really quickly, and then get behind those blockers. But it's just a lot more sophisticated than it used to be.
Yeah, no, it is. And I just want to get Brad on because I know, Brad, you're driving, and Brad Logan Media Network, all things Mississippi and the Magnolia State, covers Ole Miss, knows a lot about State, Southern, and everything down there. Brad, thanks for taking time on your Friday morning to join us. It's opening weekend. Rebels have got Troy, and Memphis is traveling down to Starkville. I want to first start with your thoughts on that Memphis game against Mississippi State. This is year 3 for Mike Leach. What are you looking for? A couple of things that if you see them in game 1, you think, okay, they have turned a corner, or one of many corners. It's a 12-game schedule. But what will you be looking for tomorrow night in Starkville? Then we'll head to Oxford after that.
Yeah, I'll mainly be looking to see the wide receiving core at Mississippi State. They lost Makai Pope. They lost a couple of other receivers to graduation. So is Jaden Wiley going to take the step that he needs to take the step up? Tulu Griffin. We've heard the name Rufus Harvey, a freshman out of Starkville High School, has taken a big step. Sophomore Antonio Harmon out of Kosciuszko, Mississippi, has taken a pretty good step forward. So we know Will Rogers is going to be good. That offensive line returns everyone except the talented Charles Cross, who's now playing in the NFL.
Yeah.
I think Mississippi State's going to be really, really good this year. And I think so many people are kind of overlooking them. I think we're hearing a lot of Arkansas talk, but I think we should be hearing Mississippi State talk. The problem with Mississippi State, the schedule is not great for them.
Brad, if you can, hold that thought for 1 second. We got to take a quick break. I want to get back into the Mississippi State schedule, and we're going to do it right after this break with Brad Logan of Logan Media Network with Rob and Jimmy.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Brad, we had to go to the break, but you were getting into the Mississippi State schedule, and that's why I love having you on here, because you do the due diligence like very few people have, like a trial lawyer going before the SCOTUS. So let's talk about the Bully schedule.
Yeah, and before we get to that, I was just going to say I think a lot of people are overlooking Mississippi State this year, and they're looking at their schedule. Well, really, the only difference in this year versus last year is they transferred Vanderbilt out, and now they've got Georgia coming in. So obviously that's a big deal. Obviously, I don't think Mississippi State beats Georgia by any stretch, but I do think they play them hard, and I think Mississippi State's going to sneak up and beat some people this year. I think Ole Miss should be on alert this year. Mississippi State's 0-2 against Ole Miss. I think Mike Leach, under Mike Leach, and I think he needs to win that game from a fan base standpoint. But I think just from a schedule standpoint, on the road, they go to Arizona. I think Arizona, they're not a very good team, but anything can happen in Pac-12 after dark. And then it opens up with a non-conference game this weekend against a Memphis team that they should have beaten last year. We don't have to go into detail about how they lost that game. I think Mississippi State rolls tomorrow, and I think it's a good chance State finishes 8-4. I really like this team. I like this team defensively. They've got some great pieces in the back half of that secondary, and I think Mississippi State's going to really surprise some teams this year for sure.
Zach Arnett is the defensive coordinator. What's he going to do differently, you think, or just keep building on his past success?
Well, they recruited really well across the defensive line, and you got a Nathan Pickering who kind of toyed with transferring out, and it was one of the best sales jobs Zach Arnett did by keeping him on the team. And Pickering's going to anchor that defensive front. I really like that defensive line this year for Mississippi State. But you look at that secondary, and I think the secondary has got a lot of familiar names that they had from last year. And I think Mississippi State's going to be really, really good. And I don't think a lot of people are talking about them, Rob. And you look at the way the schedule lays out, they've got a lot of teams coming into Starkville, not an easy place to play. And a lot of teams coming in this year that they're returning those road trips. I think the Bulldogs win 8 games.
Got a question now from an Ole Miss fan listening down in Oxford. Hiram Williams says, "Why isn't Dart?" This is his question, not mine. But why isn't Dart? I thought he was the clear-cut guy. Why hadn't he been named the starter at Ole Miss?
I think the simple answer in that is the quarterbacks Luke Altmaier and Jackson Dart are dead even. Yeah. And as of last night, we heard from Lane Kiffin, and he specifically said the reason I haven't named a starter is not because of some competitive advantage for John Summerall and the Detroit Trojans. He said that's dumb. The reason I haven't named a starter is because neither one is better than the other right now. It's pretty cut and dry for Lane Kiffin. Now, you can choose to believe that or not. Everybody's got their own opinion. Mm-hmm. But everybody expected it, and myself included, that Jackson Dart would be named the starter, shortly after he committed to Ole Miss. And to be fair, Luke Altmaier had something to say about that. And I've said that on his program. Rather than complain and talk about woe is me and I'll be a good backup, Luke Altmaier went to work. He went to the film room. He went to the weight room. He got with his offensive coaches. He got better, and he's made this a quarterback competition, a legit quarterback competition. And that goes to show you how hard of a worker Luke Altmaier is and just how close this quarterback battle is.
Well, that's a coach's dream, is to have guys that just don't go over there and wilt and, woe is me, have that self-loathing attitude. I absolutely agree with you. Jimmy, I know you got some questions for Brad Logan. Folks, y'all can follow him, the Logan Media Network. If you're smart, you'll do it.
Well, to follow up on this quarterback discussion, I mean, a big reason for this was that Altmaier was head and shoulders the better quarterback in the spring. I mean, he'd been in the system when he'd come in games last year, especially against, Tennessee. He was in for a series when Corral got injured, and he was flawless on 3 or 4 passing attempts. And he just looked a lot more comfortable with the system. And in the spring game, he was much better. But then in preseason camp, you heard a lot of speculation. And, of course, and I want you to elaborate on this, too, because you must think you came in from outer space or something, all of a sudden being allowed as a press corps to be able to watch Ole Miss practices, because certainly that's unheard of in the SEC, over the last 20 years or so. And speculation got out, that Dart was a different player during preseason camp, and that he was really gaining a lot of momentum. And so from what you've seen, is it pretty much dead even? And the truth of the matter is that Kiffin would really be comfortable going with either guy.
I think he would, to be honest with you, going with either quarterback. But I think a lot of the reasons that the lane open practice is so the press corps could see that Jackson Dart had progressed considerably since the spring. Every decision that Lane Kiffin makes, from his dog all the way up to starting quarterback, to what he says in the press conferences, to talking about the city of Oxford and how much he enjoys Ole Miss, everything he said is calculated. Everything he says is very well thought out. And there's a reason behind every single thing he says, everything he posts, and everything that comes out of the university's marketing department. So a lot of the reason I think, Jimmy, that he opened practice is because we could see the production of how Jackson Dart had progressed. You're right. Had the offense down a lot better than Jackson Dart did during the spring. He looked better in the spring game. And also, Luke Altmaier, you pointed this out perfectly as well. He was able to come into the front of the wolves, so to speak, in Tennessee, in one of the raucous environments that Ole Miss has ever played in, on the road at Auburn. And then, of course, the biggest challenge he had was coming in and relieving that against Baylor, which is one of the best defenses I've seen Ole Miss play in probably 15 years. So those are 3 opportunities that Luke Altmaier came into some very, let's just say uninviting opportunities. It's not like he came in against Central Arkansas. He came in against 3 really good opponents and 3 very hostile environments. So he's been battle tested. Now, I understand, you go back and look at what Jackson Dart has done at USC. He's been in the trenches. I get all that. But at the end of the day, this is not as cut and dry as people thought. And once again, I'm raising my hand. I expect it to be cut and dry as Jackson Dart come in and take this position. And quite frankly, he has done it. Now, if you were to ask me who I think starts on Saturday, I think it's probably Jackson Dart. But if Luke Altmaier rolls out as starting quarterback, I would not at all be surprised. I would not be surprised at all if either play. I don't think we'll see anything like Jim Harbaugh is doing with alternating quarterbacks each game. But Lane Kiffin was asked specifically by Michael Katz in the Daily Journal, do you want to play 2 quarterbacks? And he said emphatically, no, I do not.
Brad, in the SEC West, Alabama is a prohibitive favorite. That's not a surprise. We all know that. But everybody out there is playing to win the games. And Alabama is going to have to play those 12 to get the 12 wins if they're going to go undefeated. And I think people get way too caught up in looking, 8-10 games into the schedule and saying that's when we'll know if it's a good team. Fans need to have fun along the way in the regular season. I want to switch gears and just ask you, in who do you think, other than Alabama, I'm picking Arkansas as the biggest threat outside of Alabama in the SEC West. Who's your pick or picks?
Well, everybody in the SEC West, as you both know, they're not going 10-2. I mean, they're going to be some 7-5, some 5-7s out there, and people, we need to understand that. I mean, some of the best games are going to be Arkansas and Mississippi State. Then you look at Ole Miss and Auburn. Remember last year LSU came within a couple of plays of beating Alabama. Auburn and Brian Harsin had a chance to beat Alabama. So who takes a step back? I think Arkansas takes a step back this year. I think Mississippi State wins some games they're not supposed to, finishing 8-4. I think Ole Miss probably takes a step back this year and finishes around 8-4 as well. I'm excited to see LSU and to see what they have to offer. I think LSU can win some games this year, but they're probably around that 8-4 area as well, maybe 7-5. I think Texas A&M honestly takes a step back as well and finishes somewhere around 8-4, 7-5, because I just don't know offensively what they're going to do any differently than they did last year. So what happens with A&M? And then you've got Auburn kind of hanging out there. And I guess I'm not one of these people that's ready to sell Auburn off into the sunset. I think Brian Harson's got something to prove.
Yeah.
A lot of people pick the Tigers to finish dead last. I think Brian Harson's a really good football coach, and I think he's got something to prove this year. I think the Tigers win a couple of games. Maybe they're not supposed to. So if you're asking me the team that surprises everybody this year, I think that's Mississippi State. And I think the team that takes a step back was probably Texas A&M or Arkansas.
All right, and switch over to the East. Other than Georgia, who is a big favorite to win the East, who in the other 6 teams jumps out at you as a threat?
I think there's so many athletes on Florida's roster. For whatever reason, they just were not playing for Dan Mullen. They did not buy into the program. And I think Billy Napier, the new head coach coming over from Louisiana, is going to completely right that ship. And he's already got a lot of people buying in. There's a lot of positive publicity coming out of that program. I think Florida is absolutely the prohibitive favorite to challenge Georgia this year. I'm still not sold on Tennessee. We saw Hendon Hooker kind of come on a little bit last year. So I think, we'll probably see, Tennessee probably take a step up a little bit, but I don't know if they're ready to take that big step up. Carolina, we'll see. The ball kind of bounced their way a little bit last year late in the games. And I'm not buying Kentucky just yet either. I want to see them win some games they're supposed to, just like last year, and follow up some of those wins. But the team I'm looking for this year out of the East is definitely the Florida Gators.
Yeah, and they got a big one tomorrow. They're a 2.5-point underdog in the Swamp against Utah, preseason, and defending Pac-12 champion. So we're going to find out. But that game ain't going to make or break them. It's just the first game. And with Billy Napier and the staff he has, he was 40-12 in 4 years at Louisiana Lafayette. He's got some of his players like Osiris Torrance came over with him. But you're right. Why didn't they play for Dan Mullen? Hell, that's why he got fired. They weren't playing for him. And, and Dan Mullen had 9 years of success at Mississippi State. He averaged almost 8 wins a year. That's the greatest run. It was consistent. But I look at Florida like you do. There's a lot of athletes on the team. It's not like they don't have anybody, but if Anthony Richardson steps up at quarterback, this guy physically is so gifted. He's going to be a nightmare for every opponent they have. Jimmy, I know you got more questions. Brad Logan of Logan Media Network is on with us, and he's ready to answer.
Yeah, I mean, the SEC just overall to me is fascinating because you got so many storylines, and I thought it was interesting you mentioned this Arkansas-Mississippi State game, because I guarantee you that State is going to have a few things under their sleeve getting ready for Arkansas, because they'll remember that debacle 2 years ago, exactly 7 days after they'd rolled up 623 passing yards at LSU, and then Barry Odom comes in with the 3-2-6 scheme, and it just completely confused Costello, totally shut down their air raid offense, and Arkansas came out of there with a shocking upset. So, yeah, I'll guarantee you State's ready for that one. And then also Ole Miss going to Arkansas. I mean, Arkansas not scoring on that 2-point conversion attempt at the end. There's a lot of games out there you look where the losing team is looking to settle a score. And I will assure you that Mississippi State has Auburn's attention. They're going to be ready to play that game in Starkville. So, and that's the beauty about this league, is that if you're not on your A game, it doesn't matter if it's Alabama or Georgia. If you're playing your C game and your opponent that day is playing their A game, and their quarterback and the receivers, everything's clicking. You can come out on the short end. So there really aren't many boring games, or when you look at the schedule, oh, that's a win. This is not a league where you can mark W's on your side of the ledger before a game is played. And I can't help but just see, I know they're playing Hawaii, but Vanderbilt, man, they just look like a totally different team, and they could stay injury free. They might have something in store for some teams that thought that was an automatic win coming into the season. And, remember last year, Brad, Vandy had South Carolina beat in Columbia. And South Carolina drove 75 yards at the very end of the game. I just didn't think Vandy's defensive scheme was very aggressive. But I'm telling you what, there is no game that's an automatic win.
No, and I feel very comfortable right now on this program saying Vanderbilt is going to win at least one SEC game this year. They may win two. They're going to surprise people. I like Mike Wright a lot. And I really like Clark Lee, their head coach, even more. And I like his confidence. He's a quiet, confident guy. And I think that's the perfect person for Vanderbilt. He understands the dynamics. Candace Lee came out just the other day and talked about all of the football enhancements that Vanderbilt's going to be doing at the university with the indoor practice facility, all the changes to Vanderbilt Stadium that's going to be coming. They just sold Vanderbilt Stadium's media rights, so it's going to be called a new named stadium. So they've got a lot of influx of money. They've got the Vanderbilt United plan coming together. I think Vandy wins a couple of SEC games. But at the end of the day, I just think Mississippi State, the way that schedule sets up, and look, I know you think I'm crazy, and then that's fine. I've been called crazy names over the last few months anyway. But Georgia coming into Starkville is intriguing to me. I don't think that Mississippi State wins the game, but I think with all that stuff going on in Starkville, you let Mississippi State get hot, went on the road at Arizona. They're going to kill Memphis tomorrow and just get some confidence behind Will Rogers, who I know for a fact Will Rogers feels disrespected. He's not mentioned amongst any polls whatsoever. Yeah. His name is nowhere. And he's going to be the all-time leading passer in the history of college football when he leaves Mississippi State. I just think the Bulldogs have something to prove. And, Jimmy, I think when Arkansas comes to in Starkville, they're going to get all they want from Mississippi State. And before we go today, I have to say this. The game of the week, could it be in it could be in Hattiesburg when Hugh Freeze in Liberty walks into the buzzsaw known as The Rock down at Southern Miss, and Will Hall, the head coach of the Golden Eagles. I think that could be the game of the week. And a lot of Mississippians are kind of not talking about that game quite as much as they should.
Brad,
Liberty's got a pretty good team.
Yeah, Brad, can you hold those thoughts?
They're walking into a hornet's nest on Saturday.
Yeah, Brad, if you can hold those thoughts, we got time for like a couple more minutes after the break. I want you to talk more about that Southern Miss Liberty game. That is big. We'll be right back with Brad Logan.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
Okay, we got a few more minutes with Brad Logan of Logan Media Network. And Brad, you were really on a roll about this Liberty Southern Miss game. And I'm glad to hear talk about it. I mean, whether it's AAC, Sun Belt, Gulf South, whatever, I love college football anywhere.
Yeah, and that's just a game that I'm interested in seeing because so many dynamics at play there. You got two Mississippi natives, of course, Hugh Freeze from Senatobia. You got Will Hall, who grew up in Amory, all-time leading passer at Amory High School. Dad, Bobby Hall, won a number of state championships at Amory, at Madison Central. And then Will, of course, played at North Alabama, won the Harlan Hill, which is the equivalent of the Heisman Trophy in Division II. So Will Hall, not only a great coach, but one of the genuinely nicest guys I've ever met. And so every time I see Will, he comes up to me and just we talk about Mississippi football. I promise you, I try not to be someone that roots for anybody in this business, but God, it's so hard not to root for him. I just wish him all the best, and I just think it's going to be interesting because that's a program in Southern Miss that kind of was a program that was really rolling under Jeff Bauer. Kind of took a turn when Ellis Johnson came in, and it kind of lost its way, and all of a sudden now it's kind of getting back to that black and blue. Kind of getting back to that anybody, anywhere, anytime attitude.
Yeah.
And they're going to have to fight off teams like Troy, South Alabama, Tulane, because they're coming into the backyard. But I think Will Hall can do it. He's recruiting Mississippi really hard. Still's recruiting those JUCOs really hard. And I'm really proud of him. And I'm excited about that game Saturday.
Hey, look, I think that's a good character trait on your part, Brad, to pull for people like Will. How can you not? I mean, I agree with you totally. And I think it's great for the state of Mississippi. I mean, when you got a big game like that. And again, all these other conferences, they're important, and they're important to their fan bases. And there are not many people out there that really know about all the schools in their state. I know you primarily cover Ole Miss. You know a lot about state, obviously, but top to bottom everywhere, as well as the high school. And folks, if you want to know anything about what's going on in Mississippi, Brad, tell them how they can follow you.
Yeah, we're excited. I wanted to pass along too that I do television, our game day show in Oxford on WJTV in Jackson, Mississippi. We're excited to partner with WREG News Channel 3 in Memphis, so that'll be simulcast on both those television platforms. But of course, you can follow me at Brad Logan COT on Twitter. That's where you'll find the Believe in Ole Miss podcast, part of the Believe Network, and also continue to do work for Inside the Rebels, an affiliate of 247 Sports.
So, Brad, you're telling me now your pregame show, which is a game day type setup, right on the edge of the Grove, is going to be all in Memphis on Channel 3. That is big. Congratulations.
Yeah, that'll be on from 12 to 1:30. We usually come on an hour and a half, 2 hours before the game. So it'll be 12 until 1:30. And then, of course, kickoff starts at 3. And so we're excited about partnering with Ole Miss, WREG, and WJTV this season.
All right, man. Great stuff. Look forward to having you on next week. Be careful. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
You bet, man. Jimmy, there you go, Brad. And Brad knows a lot about Ole Miss, but he knows a lot about Mississippi State, about Southern. That game, Liberty and Southern Miss. I mean, that is big. And I like that mentality. Mississippi State or Southern Miss was very much like what Florida State did. We'll play anybody, anywhere. And they slipped. And now they're trying to fight their way back. And that makes for a very compelling storyline. Hugh Freeze, he's at Liberty. He's had success there. I'm sure his name is mentioned every time there's an opening anywhere. And I don't know if or when he'll be back in the SEC or not. But that's what we talk about, is that, all these other conferences, there's some really good matchups. You think about Appalachian State going back 15 years ago when opening weekend, they beat Michigan in the Big House. That's what we love about college football.
Yeah, well, you talk about that Appalachian State Michigan game. That was the very first game ever televised on the Big Ten Network. And that gave you an idea that the Big Ten Network was going to be pretty successful. And what a lot of people forget about that game was that Appy State was coming off 2 consecutive FCS Nationals championships, and they had a 3-score lead in that game. So they actually were ahead that whole time when Michigan was, trying to come back and win it at the end. So in a lot of ways, it was not a fluke, but it just tells you that in college football, if you're not ready to play every week, you can get beat, especially in these lower classifications that have had a lot of success over a long period of time, which App State had coming into that game.
Yeah, they had Johnny Ballpark Franks up in Nashville, the capital city, joins us, does a weekly sports radio show down in Huntsville on the UMP, Mondays at 5 in the p.m. Central. Florida State alumnus, grew up in a house full of Auburn fans, but he wanted to be different, and he's not only different, he's an elite interviewer with over 13,000 conversations in his years, and he's interviewed more Heisman Trophy winners than any living human being. Johnny, Gene Deckerhoff, he's retired from the Seminoles, but Sunday night, man, down in the Superdome, it's going to be big. And Chief Osceola, obviously this isn't a home game. He won't be riding out on Renegade to throw the spear at midfield before kickoff. But this is big. Understand that Florida State has sold all of their 30,000 ticket allotment for the Superdome. And, they'll bring a lot more fans that'll just, buy them off the street. And LSU, of course, they're going to be there. It's like that is a home game for them. But are they ready? What kind of game do you expect Sunday night?
Absolutely. I think they're ready. And I don't know if you had a chance to catch them on Saturday. Yes, I understand it was Duquesne, but it was a Duquesne team that had 5 conference titles over the last 10 plus years. The Florida State looked good. I mean, for the first time in program history, they had 3 running backs go over 100 yards in the same game against Duquesne. Florida State did what they needed to do in a week 0 game. And the fact that they have a game under their belt, LSU, this will be their first game under Brian Kelly. I think the wrong team is favored here. Usually I will take a team in the points or give points. And this one, I took Florida State in the money line because I don't think Florida State's going to need the 3 points. I think they come away on Sunday night with a victory against LSU.
Well, it's going to be one of those games where LSU, you've got to be very careful if you're LSU. You're most likely, I say it all the time because I love to bet and bet on these games. Nothing more than like a steamer pack of crystals or $1, but you're most likely to get mugged in your own driveway. This is game 1 of the Brian Kelly era. And you've had the last couple of years have been a living hell if you're an LSU fan coming off that national championship game. I think Florida State comes in here desperate, hungry, and on a mission. Mike Norvell, I watched what he did at Memphis. Come on, man. He didn't have the resources and the talent that he has at Florida State. So you're picking Florida State. I think you said a few weeks ago, maybe 8 or 9 wins. That is Sunday night's going to be big. It's the only game on TV for college, I believe. So it will be a big. Florida State gets this win. It could propel them to a hell of a season.
Well, it kind of reminds me a lot about, 1982, this, 6-7 years into the Bobby Bowden era at Florida State. They had a really couple of great years in 79, 80, then they went downhill in 81. But starting in 82, that was a team that not a lot of high expectations. It was a top 25 team, but not really. But they get on a roll, and each and every week they improved. And they got to the point where they were in the position to, have a nice bowl at the end of the year. And to me, that really started. It was almost like these false starts per se before they went into that 14-year stretch of top 5 finishes in 87. This Florida State team under Mike Norvell, I think that they're, they have their own identity now. That they're getting better on the offensive line. The defense is starting to look like Florida State defenses of old. They're not there yet, but they're getting there. And I think that the schedule presents itself to the point it allows them to get better week in and week out. And I think on paper on Sunday night, Florida State is just better than LSU at this point in the season.
Yeah, the quarterback situation, three running backs going over 100 yards in one game, that does not happen very often. Jimmy Hodge.
Well, they made the point. They made I tell you what, they really used the transfer portal well. They've used it well over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
I remember think about how Georgia's defense would have looked with Johnson, who was the ACC Defensive Player of the Year this past year. I just really like this Florida State team. Look, they're not going to be 11-1 or 12-0 this year, but I like what they represent about college football, and I like the opportunity this team has. Remember, they could have easily have knocked off Notre Dame last year to begin the season. Instead, they go 0-4 to begin the year, but then they finished strong, winning 5 of their remaining 8 games. And so I think that momentum has really helped them in the offseason, and I like their chances.
Well, you've got to have athletes, and Florida State's always going to have those. And Mike Norvell knows how to create mismatches and nightmare mismatches on game days. So that staff, you got Marcus Woodson, Kenny Dillingham, you got some good coaches on there, recruiting. They're by default they should have enough talent to get the win. Jimmy, what do you think is going to happen Sunday night?
I think it's going to be a really entertaining game. I really like Travis, the way he's developed a quarterback. But hey, Johnny, I got to ask you honestly, what percentage of those 30,000 Florida State fans, when they saw that schedule and thought, "Oh man, a Labor Day week in New Orleans, that works for me"?
Well, Florida State fans don't really need a holiday or New Orleans or any other excuse to have a good time. I'll just leave it at that.
But I agree. I think there's really a lot of genuine enthusiasm with this team because let's face it, that first year, the pandemic season, and you had that nightmarish situation with Marvin Wilson. I think it just created a cancer in the locker room. And you know as well as anybody, you've got to have a harmonious locker room, I think, to be a successful football team. And he finally, Norvell finally dismissed him late in the season, but it was way too late. Yeah. And, that was just a big step back. And I think really, he's got this thing now moving in the right direction, and all you need is just some success, and which generates confidence within your roster. And just from your standpoint, how is Florida State recruiting going right now?
Oh, absolutely. It's wonderful. And I go back, last year you see 5-7, you go dismal season. You know as well as I do, you've been around enough teams. It's all about momentum. If they had won that against Notre Dame, I think that would have had a carryover effect where they certainly do not lose to Jacksonville State. Last year, other than Wake Forest, they were in every game. They easily could have been 11-1 last year. I mean, let that sink in. So you see 5-7, this team with momentum and confidence, 11-1 was not out of the realm of possibility for this team the way they played in those games last year. And so I know it's hard to believe that, knowing they lost to Jacksonville State at home, but that was the reality. And that's why I think that these early games for them this year, and to me, this game is so important. Not just it's the next game on the schedule, but I think it's important for this team to get a win like this to really see how all their hard work has paid off, and it pays off with wins against big teams.
Well, yeah, Johnny, and in the next week, you go to Louisville for a big road game. Malik Cunningham, one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and then the very next week, your home opener, you got Boston College, and Jerkovic, their outstanding quarterback, is going to be back at 100%. He missed like 8 or 9 games last year, and that pretty much took the air out of Boston College's balloon. But their offense is really explosive. And then you look at Wake Forest, even with Hartman out, they don't know if he's going to be out for the season or a couple of months. But man, it just seems like the Clawson's able to plug in a guy at quarterback, and their offense is really dangerous. And then you get a road game at NC State, who's considered to be a serious challenger to Clemson for the SEC title. And speaking of the devil, you get Clemson the next week. So that early season schedule is just really loaded. And I agree with you. I think it would just be huge for Florida State to get the win in New Orleans this weekend and really build some momentum for what's going to be a really stiff first half of the season.
I love this whole weekend of games. I'm looking at the schedule on Saturday, and I'm already primed in for a good 8 or 9 hours plus of, especially those afternoon games leading into the night games.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to figure out how Oregon is such a huge underdog to the Georgia Bulldogs, especially early in a season. Give me those 17.5 points all day long with Oregon. And I see Notre Dame with all the points they're getting against Ohio State. Yes, I understand the game is at Ohio State, but it sometimes takes 2 or 3 games for Ohio State to get rolling. And so give me the 17.5 with Notre Dame as well. I think there's too many points being thrown out there for some of these games on Saturday and then going to the weekend as well.
I think the way people are picking these games is they're looking at what happened last year. People, when they look at their predictions for the upcoming season, they do it out of the rearview mirror. I agree with you about Georgia being 17-point favorite. Georgia's good. They got a lot of talent and all, but you don't hear about Oregon every day like you hear about Georgia here in the South. I think Oregon is going to make Georgia play a full 60. And that's not just because I want to see Bo Nix be successful. That's not it. It's that they've got more talent than people realize. Now, remember, they got hammered by Utah last year in the Pac-12 championship, but Georgia's replacing a lot of people. Kirby Smart said it best. He said, yeah, we don't have a lot of experienced players, but they're talented. But the reason why they didn't get on the field last year is because we had a lot of talented, experienced players playing ahead of them. And if people would read and listen to what, a coach like Kirby Smart, who's in his 7th year now at Georgia, is saying, he's right. And the only way you can get those guys experience is to put them out on the field and let them play. We're going to take a quick break. Be right back with Johnny Ballpark Franks on Sidelines and Kicks 96.3. Lake Mark.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
Well, I just got a text from Carl Childers. He said, I like the quack attack in the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. I reckon they're going to come in there and get them some of them dogs. All right, then. I do think that game, Johnny and Jimmy, there's something about it. Matt Dean, our friend on the show, his son is in his first year on the staff, the football staff there at Oregon. Oregon, I'll make a comparison. When Bobby Bowden came to Florida State, we all know in 1976 from West Virginia, where they hung him in effigy in the town square, he said, we'll play anybody, anytime. It doesn't matter. We're going to build this program. We're in a talent-rich state. Well, Oregon will play anybody. They do it. I mean, they go all over the place. Didn't they get a big win on the road last year at Ohio State?
They absolutely did.
Exactly. And people went crazy. Nobody expected that. Again, you're most likely to get mugged in your own driveway. Georgia, hey, I want the SEC to win, okay? But I'm just saying they're going to be all giddy and they're going to paint the town of Atlanta red and black. It's going to be like a home game. They'll have the dog walk and all like that. Oregon is coming in laser focused. Dan Lanning knows a lot about Georgia. Kirby Smart and that staff know a lot about Dan Lanning. I'm with you. I take Oregon and the points, Johnny Ballpark Franks, the man with perhaps the coolest selection of dress shirts around.
Just ask Coach Pittman as far as with Arkansas about that one with his shirts. I like Dan Lanning a lot. Now, I like these younger coaches getting the opportunity. I mean, he was the defensive coordinator for Georgia last year. And this is an Oregon team. Remember, although they haven't named their starter, Bo Nix, it will be Bo Nix starting against Georgia. Is a team that won 10 games last year. They have 15 starters back, 50-plus letter winners. And everybody thinks the Georgia team of last year is going to be the team showing up Saturday afternoon in Atlanta, and that's not the case. Georgia will be in a dogfight, no pun intended, and I think the game will be decided in the fourth quarter. It could go either way, but I at least think Oregon is going to keep it within, single digits. I don't see this 17-plus point favorite win for Georgia against Oregon on Saturday afternoon.
I got to ask you one last night. We had a renewal of an 11-year hiatus. The Backyard Brawl Pitt in West Virginia played up in Pittsburgh. I'm just, Pete Narduzzi, what a job. He's come from Michigan State as their defensive coordinator to Pitt. They won the ACC last year. Look, I know we've been hammering the ACC, but I just keep thinking when you watch these regular season games, when the teams are playing better, you are a fool if you take anything from these bowl matchups. I mean, you really are. You're like someone that goes out and panics and freaks out about the stock market every day. I always tell people, my clients, if you're worrying every day, you're like someone who has a vegetable garden in their backyard and they go out and they pull the root, the tomatoes and the corn up by the roots every day to check the progress. It's not going to work out if you keep doing that. I'm telling you right now, that game last night, West Virginia Pitt, is another reason why college football, by doing that, they're bringing more fans back into the stands and eyeballs to the TV sets, Johnny.
Yeah, it was basically a battle of the former USC quarterbacks.
Correct.
And Keaton Slovis had the better night over Daniels with West Virginia. A great game. And look, this to me, when you get games like that, when you get a Arkansas versus Cincinnati, although we won't go down that road the way I believe that Cincinnati had no business being in the playoff last year. But to me, maybe, we have all these bowl games, right? At the end of the year, maybe we can pull a NASCAR, like, with the Daytona 500 at the beginning of the year. Maybe we can split it up and have some of these bowl games in week 0, or if you want to call it the official week 1, but say week 0, and move some of these bowl games at the end of the year to the beginning of the year so we can get more of these fun non-conference matchups.
Absolutely agree. And we talked about this last week on the show. May have been you, it was one of our guests, about the spring games. Let's get some of these have the spring game, have Georgia play Washington and Southern Cal play at Ole Miss, and you flip around. So I guess, I hate to say it, but some years you're not going to have a spring game, I guess. But we need to do things like that to do cutting edge, and also give schools bonus points or money for the most players they have that stay on their team. It's called.
Here we are 2 years after COVID, right?
Yeah.
And obviously even last year, COVID's still impacting the, attending games per se. And yet, just like college football was not proactive as far as name, image, and likeness and allowed the government to get involved, well, the same thing applies to what happens to these fans who got so accustomed to sitting on their living room couches. It's like, I don't really want to go see a beat down to see how bad my favorite team is going to beat this team coming up this weekend. Is it going to be by 7 or 8 touchdowns? And just to your point, I think that whatever you can do to be creative to get more fans in the stands, I think it's important, because it's not one of these things, well, if the game is on, people will show up. That's not the case anymore.
Well, what I think really goes on, I think 2 years ago during the virus, and Jimmy and I and you, we've talked about it a lot. I think a lot of people tried to say, fans will stay home in their man caves. No, it's just not that much fun. You get tired of rolling around on the couch and you get curvature of the spine and scoliosis. It's miserable. You want to be there on campus in that environment. And this is what I'm going to compare it to. I think the fans who stayed away are it's like a player. If you ever have been injured and you're the starter and your backup's in there doing really well, you want to get back out on that field. The fans are going to come back. College football is owned by the fans. It's not owned by 18, 19-year-old kids demanding a bunch of money, because I'm going to tell you something that's going to blow up in their face. The wealthiest people that I know, and I manage people's money for a living. That's what I've been doing 31 plus years. Not one of them that I've talked to, none of them are participating in this NIL stuff. Now, I'm not saying I hate it, but I know you got to have it, but I don't like 18, 19-year-old kids demanding and telling us what to do. You say, well, that's just the way it is. No, it's not.
See, that's why Auburn is going to be always looking up to Alabama and the state of Alabama with that mindset.
Well, no. What I'm saying,
I hate to be offensive about it, but that's the reality.
No, what I'm saying is you got to do it right. I'm just saying I don't want that to be what dominates. I want to hear about the team. You've got to have NIL. Have
you seen some of these sports cars that these players are now driving on campus?
Yeah, that's
across the country.
Yeah.
I'm not making this up.
No,
I mean,
know.
Cars that probably are too much of a car for these individuals to be driving, meaning, your first car doesn't need to be a Lamborghini.
No, I agree.
Just throwing that out there.
Or an Aston Martin, or
exactly.
All I'm saying is this. Let me say this. I just think the way, I guess with wealth management, put it in a deferred trust or an incentive-based trust. I mean, make the money. That's great, but you've got to have it. And if you're not competitive with NIL, you're not going to be competitive. But I just don't.
But they could have shaped that landscape. Instead, they were reactive instead of proactive, and now it's too late.
Yeah, it's like
you can't allow it to get out there and then try to reel it back in. It's too late.
You can't buy fire insurance when your house is on fire. That's what my point.
Right, exactly. That's a good way of looking at it right there.
Yeah,
I mean that ship has sailed.
Yeah.
This is college football the way it's going to be now.
Yeah, but
what's going to happen is you're going to get to the point where some schools will have the Rob Browns of the world representing them on a field, but will never see the side of a classroom. And then you will have the true student athlete. You're going to have Group A, Group B, and that's what college football is going to look like in the next 10 years.
Well, getting back to the games, I wanted to say that I was really impressed with JT Daniels last night.
I was too. I liked his effort.
He got beat to a pulp, and he hung in there. And what was so tragic about the game is that the wide receiver that kind of had his coming out party, Bryce Ford Wheaton, had two big touchdown catches. The difference in the game was when Daniels throws him a perfect pass. It goes, 3 or 4 minutes left in the game, right between his hands. He didn't even have to move his hands to catch the ball. And I think it goes off his face mask, pops up in the air, and then Pitt returns it for a pick six to go up 38-31. I think maybe it was less than 2 minutes left, but yet he wasn't even phased. They just go right back down the field, and then 2 inches kept Pitt from keeping that drive alive and having first and goal at the 1 yard line. It was just a sensational game. The backyard brawl should be absolutely mandatory. I think the state legislatures of West Virginia and Pennsylvania should get involved. And
we got treated to back-to-back strong finishes between that game and then Penn State and Purdue.
Yeah.
That was an outstanding game. Penn State was in for a fight the entire night. They pulled away at the very end. But, I mean, you got Drew Brees on the sidelines. You got Purdue. Purdue is one of those teams like a Northwestern, even like a Vanderbilt, where you don't pull against them because you don't have that kind of emotions in that sense. But you kind of like get into the moment thinking that, hey, this is going to be a big win for the program. And I was enjoying every minute of both the finishes of those games you just mentioned.
Yeah.
Well, Purdue made a huge mistake by, for some reason, in the last 10 minutes of the game, deciding they're going to start throwing to where Joey Porter Jr. was defending the field for Penn State. I'm going, what are they doing? I mean, all they had to do is just stay away from him, and they were having success, the whole time. And then Purdue giving up a 60-yard touchdown pass with 2 seconds left in the first half because their DBs can't tackle. But it was a really entertaining game, and I really think those 2 games last night are going to be more or less a bookmark of what we're going to see during this entire college football season. I think it's going to be sensational.
We mentioned the 2 quarterbacks in that Pitt, West Virginia game where they were former USC. Daniels was the former Georgia also. And then you look down the list of the quarterbacks last night, and this is the part I don't like about, it's the combination of name, image, and likeness, also the combination of the transfer portal. It's good for these programs, but like seeing John Rice Plumlee, the former Ole Miss quarterback, now the quarterback for Central Florida. He had a big game last night, 300 yards passing. You just start going down that list. Emory Jones siding with Arizona State. That's the part I don't like because you really need to have like everything in pencil and move these around as far as these quarterbacks go into other programs. And I know it's other positions too, but I think a lot of these programs start with who's the face of the offense, who's the face of the team, and it's usually these quarterbacks.
Yeah, Johnny, we're going to have, if you want to stay on with us, we'd love for you to do it because we're going to have Yann Cowart, who was, when I was at Auburn, was in school down there studying architecture and also started for 3 years on the offensive line. He's now with GMC Sports Architecture, and he's building, they're doing the $91 million Auburn football facility, but we're going to talk about who's building these super facilities in college football. And again, you got to have money. I get all that. I'm just saying, I want to, Jimmy's right. We're talking about the games, and that's what I love. And when you talk about, and I'm going to ask this. Hey, Yann Cowart is on Sidelines with us on this Friday. And Yann, we've just been having a discussion. Johnny Ballpark, Frank's up in Nashville, Jimmy Hodge in Chicago, and I about name, image, and likeness and all like that. And, my whole deal is, and you were a student athlete. Now, listen, folks, there are 2 very short books that you will read, you will find in your local bookstore or on Amazon or whatever. One of them is Famous Downhill Skiers from the Okefenokee Swamp. The second one is college football players who majored in architecture while playing in a major football program and starting for 3.5 years. One of those people that did it, it's a very short book, a native of Selma, Alabama, born in Leesburg, Florida. Yann Cowart, GMC Sports Architecture in Montgomery, joins us. And Yann, I've had a couple of cups of coffee. I'm pretty wound up. Take it over.
Well, good morning, Rob. Yeah, you got everything right, except I'm not from Selma. I'm from the small hamlet of Gallia in Alabama.
Okay, gotcha. Over in the Black Belt, though.
Over in the Black Belt.
I love it. Yeah, Yann, listen, a lot is going on. And Johnny's got a background in administration at Tennessee State University, where he worked there. He has interviewed more Heisman Trophy winners than about anybody does a weekly sports show on the Ump in Huntsville. And Jimmy Hodge, of course, played college football at Louisiana Monroe and baseball and finished at UT Chattanooga. So, you're a student athlete, Yann, an example. And my dad said when he went to Auburn, his first spring there, he walked on as a kicker. And he said, I was good, but not that good. He said, Shook Jordan and Shotson and the coaches would come over there, Bradbury, knocking on the door at 5 a.m. How did you do it? And you are a perfect example of busting your ass and getting your degree, and look what you've done with it. And then what a small world it is. My dad's best friend from college, Sam Butner in Montgomery, here, y'all, you worked with Sam and now you've taken that to another level, but you're why people never quit, work hard. And you had a very kindly coach who let y'all sleep in the mornings, Coach Dye.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Well, it was a full-time job, but you just got up and did it. Just shook it off and kept going. So it can be done if you set your mind to it. Yeah. Anybody can do it. They set their mind to it.
Yeah.
Well, when I was at Tennessee State, even there were studies out there when you had, such a schedule where you had to go to class, then bam, you had to go to practice as far as whether it's football, basketball, whatever. But when you had a structured life like that with your schedule, you performed better, you did better in the classroom because you didn't have any idle time per se. You had to be focused. And that's why a lot of the student athletes outperform. People think that they're getting help, but for the most part, student athletes outperform the regular students on campus is because of that focus part of it.
Oh, that's absolutely right. I mean, the structure of it and the discipline of it, just translates over onto the school side. Yeah, you're seeing most universities, on average, the student athletes have a higher GPA overall than the average population of the university, and it's because of that.
Yeah, and Yann, we're about to take a break, and when we come back, I want to get into the business side, sports architecture, building these super facilities in the SEC and around the nation in college athletics. We've never seen anything like it. Somebody reminded me from 1965 to 1980 when Dr. Philpott was the president at Auburn, maybe one building had been built on campus. I remember when you and I were at school, our junior year at Auburn, at that time, there was over $300 million worth of new construction underway. In today's dollars, that's probably $1 billion. But a lot has changed, but we're going to talk about the new $91 million football only facility at Auburn. What goes into making that thing something special? After this quick break, Sidelines on Friday, the day before Christmas, college football really gets started.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
We're going to talk sporty with Yann Cowart, native of Gallion, Alabama. Not Selma, Gallion, but grew up, spent a lot of time in Leesburg where they got those ginormous, as my kids call them, ginormous Florida bass. But Yann, Auburn's getting closer and closer to moving in. Being the son of an architect, my dad graduated March 18th, 1954, was a KA at Auburn, studied architecture. He said, boy, that was the toughest thing I've ever done in my life besides raise you and your two sisters. But I want to talk about about that project and then what goes in the planning and all and construction. I know materials have gone up exponentially since January of 2021. A lot of reasons you can say for that, but they've gone up. But how nice is this facility going to be? And again, GMC sports architecture, what you're doing, and how nice is nice enough?
Well, back to that facility. Yeah, that facility is going to be something else, Rob. And luckily, we bid that job back almost 2 years ago. If we were bidding that same job today, it would have probably been $15 or $20 million more than it was 2 years ago. So, but it's a great facility. I mean, it's got everything that you need. It's got more. We try to make all those facilities a little bit distinct around the brand and around the culture, and it's got some really unique kind of components. A lot of data-driven components, a lot of technology, a lot of video boards, and it's oriented as much to recruiting as it is to giving the players a place to live and practice and develop.
Yeah, and let me say something real quick. Johnny Ballpark Franks had to go, but you can follow him at BP Franks Show on Twitter, and he does a weekly show Mondays 5 p.m. on the Ump in Huntsville. Yann, every time I'm in Auburn, I see, it looks better and better. It's getting closer and closer. What is the expected move-in date where Auburn football coaches and the athletes will be in there on a, not 24/7, but close to it basis?
Well, the thing about these buildings, Rob, is that, they're heavily technology driven. You've got exo systems in there to watch film. And it's not something that you can easily do in the middle of a season. It's not like you just say, one day we're going to be in this building, next day we're going to be in that one. So it's finishing up. It's about a month away from being substantially complete. Furniture and equipment will start moving in at that point. But they're really not going to occupy the building until after the season. I think they're going to go over and practice some on the practice fields. They'll certainly use it during the season as a recruiting tool, but they're not going to actually occupy it until probably bowl time.
Okay. When you look at size wise, how big is it?
It's about 235,000 square feet, of which 90,000 of that is the new indoor practice facility. That'll be just for football. 2-level. It's got about a 7,000 square foot locker room in it. And it's actually, the unique thing about this building is that and this was all done pre-COVID, but it's kind of worked its way out. We created 2 locker rooms. One of them is really their home lounge, relaxing area. The other one is really their equipment, where all the smelly and stinky and sweaty stuff lives. So you've been in locker rooms, Rob.
Yeah.
Once that smell gets in there, it's impossible to get out.
Yeah.
And we tried to segregate that so that their main locker room is more of a place that they would like to stay and be in the facility and relax and build camaraderie amongst the team.
Yeah. Yann, when you think about architecture and its involvement, when you've been practicing now for a while, and you look at these facilities, and Florida's got the Hefner Center. I don't know if y'all did that or not, but what are some of the other projects that GMC and you have had a hand in developing?
Well, we've done stuff all across the South, really. But Clemson's new football facility, y'all seen that? It's got the slide in it.
Yeah.
You've seen. We did that as well as their indoor. We did UAB's football facility there in Birmingham. We're currently designing Middle Tennessee's. That should start construction sometime the first of the year. We've done Auburn's. We're doing other facilities like at Georgia Southern. They're building a new football indoor. It's really a pavilion. It's kind of open air. We've done it at South Alabama. Projects there. We're working a little bit at University of West Florida. So we're all over the board. We've done also Clemson softball stadium. Fixing to do a little baseball work at Georgia Southern.
Yeah, another question. One more question before I go to Jimmy. Auburn's basketball arena is 12 years old now. It's hard to believe. How old is old in today's world with all the money that's coming in?
Well, I mean, I don't know technically if a facility is so old that you got to build a new one, but we're usually seeing about a 6 to 7 year cycle that something either is added or renovated on almost all these facilities. It's constant in parts, but really larger projects, they're happening on about a 7 or 8 year cycle.
Because what did the Mercedes-Benz? Well, Georgia Dome was built. It opened in 93 or 94, and in 2017 they went into the new Mercedes-Benz Stadium. And these are billion-plus facilities. If a school like Auburn or Alabama or Tennessee were to start over and build a new football stadium on campus in today's dollars, what would that cost? What's your, as my dad calls it, a swag, a scientific wild ass guess?
Yeah, I mean, comparable cost anywhere probably from $800 million to probably 1.5 billion.
Yeah. So, like I say, in college, we pride ourselves on how old our stadiums are. In the NFL, on how new they are. Is that correct?
Yeah, but I tell you, the demographic is changing, Rob. The crowd is changing. We're going through a millennial age where people are more social. They've got more technology. They go to games not necessarily to watch the game, but to be at the game and be around. So stadiums are going to go through a transition. These old kind of historic stadiums with big upper decks. I mean, we're seeing it right now at Mississippi State's adding loge boxes in their upper deck, kind of like at their baseball field. They're going to start moving more towards the premium market, downsizing in the number of seats, but offering more amenities because, the 100,000 seat stadium is really a thing of the past.
I agree. Jimmy, you're on with Yann Cowart, GMC Architecture, Sports Architects extraordinaire, I might add.
Well, Yann, I would like to get an idea of just how this entire process works, whether it's a football only training state-of-the-art facility or a renovation to an existing football stadium. Do the schools send out bids to the most well-known firms, and is it kind of a secret ballot scenario in regard to how much each firm anticipates the cost would be for the school, and how long does that process take, or is it done in stages? Do they, after the first round of bids they receive, do they narrow it down to the last couple? And then what factors do you guys bake into the cake in regard to if you guys can do this in a feasible manner, and then considering how much manpower it's going to take, and then letting the schools know what length of time it's going to take to complete the project?
Yeah, there's a lot there, but so the process is that this is a specialty kind of design entity, on the sports side, and the largest sports architects, ironically, are out of Kansas City. Most of the major ones are there. We've kind of created a niche for ourselves here in the South, basically, but it's an interview process. Basically, the school will put out an RFP, a request for proposal.
Yeah.
And they then shortlist that down to 3 or 4 of the most qualified groups that respond. And then they interview. And it's usually an hour and a half interview. You present your capabilities. They make a decision based upon that as to who to select. And then it's really not bid work on the design side. The fees are kind of industry-wide set. There's negotiation, of course, but it's not necessarily the lowest fee from the design standpoint. It's the most qualified group because there's not a lot of swing between everybody's numbers of what it takes.
Yeah.
And so then once you're selected, you start the design process for the Auburn job. That was about a year-long process of getting from start to final construction documents. And then that work is then either negotiated with contractors and, again, either selected based upon lowest fee or best qualified contractor, or in the case of Auburn in the state of Alabama, it's hard bid. And so the lowest bid is the winning contractor.
Yeah.
And then it's about an 18-month construction process on that level of job, that size of job.
Has it been hard to get enough labor? Everywhere you go, there's help wanted signs, desperately help wanted signs, and we're closed because we can't get any help.
Well, again, I think it is right now for sure, Rob. And the prices are so volatile; they're moving. Every 30 days you're getting price increases. But when we actually did that job, things were good. The market was capable of handling it. And, so we actually, though, we saw all this coming, and we ended up buying a lot of materials way ahead of when we really would have, or the contractor did, just to make sure that we could get them.
Yeah.
Because there's things that have been ordered for a year now that still aren't here. So it's been a struggle.
Who's your general contractor on this job?
Rayburn.
I
of Auburn, Alabama.
I went to school with Sigma Nu with Travis. Rest his soul, one of the great people of all time, and Matt, great people. They and
they've done a great job.
Oh God, and my friend Jay Thomason, another fraternity brother of mine's there. I'm sure you know Jay, and just great. I just got to ask you this too. We're about out of time, but what are some trends that you see going forward? Just looking around the SEC, you're right. I see Bama reducing 2,500 seats and across the board, but I'd like to hear your vision of where we're going with stadiums in the SEC in the next 5 or 10 years.
Well, again, I think, a lot of it's going to be recruit kind of driven, and certainly premium level type seats driven, downsizing of stadiums. I think technology is going to play a big role. Rob, we sit around and ponder where we're going to be 5 years from now. And as AI starts to roll out and get more powerful, I think there's going to be all kinds of impacts on sporting events related to AI, to the point that just imagine an NIL guy that signs a contract and somehow has a camera in his head, in his helmet, and you can tie into that system and actually participate in the game from his perspective. Yeah. And he gets a fee for it. Right?
Yeah. I mean,
that's the kind of thing that we see coming.
I just was thinking, someone said yesterday, I saw, how do you watch a game? I've always done this to make myself pay attention, is I pick it out of a jersey of a guy that's a starter, obviously, and put myself there. It makes you pay attention to what's going on. This takes it like to GoPro level, doesn't it?
That's exactly right. And the technology's coming. So a lot of that kind of infrastructure, we're already doing it in the football building, where we've got, tracker systems, and they can analyze and evaluate people's performance based upon the analytics that they're gathering from them wearing a tracking system during practice, for instance.
Yeah. And we're wondering now they're going to have technology in the helmets, where they can communicate like they do in the NFL. That's another thing. One other thing, the facility now, as far as recruiting goes, where do you put Auburn's facility compared to others in the SEC?
Oh, it's going to be at the top. When it opens, it's going to be the premier facility in the SEC. There's no doubt. But, you got to stay on your toes, because people are it's constantly moving, and there's the Jones effect takes place, and everybody's going to keep pushing you to keep up to pace. And, they'll get past in the next 4 or 5 years. Somebody will do something that's a little bit bigger. Wow.
Yeah, you're right. And that Clemson facility has been the standard, but I guess you live by that motto, the only easy project was yesterday's project, and you got to go forward from there. But Yann,
that's exactly right.
Yann, I know you got to get into a meeting here in a few minutes. We promised we would get you off. We're about out of time, but we got to do this again, because you really opened Jimmy and mine and all of our listeners and viewers' eyes because again, you're taking some seats away. Less is more in terms of revenue, and that's what's driving everything. Yann, tell people how they can follow you and get in touch with you and y'all's architectural firm, because again, I have a tremendous amount of respect for what you do, having grown up with a dad as an architect who believes he'll retire when he's 100, but it's an incredible profession, and what you do is incredible, and with the help of a few good engineers along the way.
Well, I invite anybody to, follow me on Instagram. It's pretty easy. Cowart on Instagram. I do post a lot of stuff from that. But also our website is www.gmcnetwork.com.
All right.
And you can find our sports projects on that webpage.
All right, Lay, look forward to seeing you down here this fall. It's right on top of us. Have a great meeting today. Yann, Cowart, to all of our listeners, hey, go out and help somebody with the expectation of getting nothing in return. Don't give to get, give to give. Most often, we'll see the face of Christ in the least among us. And just remember, folks, hard work works. That's one thing you will never forget about life. Hard work. Look what Yann Cowart did. That is a student athlete, a walk-on. And look where he is today in architecture, doing a project at his alma mater and schools all over. We'll be back tomorrow on Saturday. Got a great show lined up. Till then, have a great day, everybody. We're out of here. See you then.